Imagine an empress so bold, so untamed, that she turned Rome's sacred halls into a playground of scandal, outwitting senators, humiliating emperors, and shaking an empire to its core. Meet Messalina, Rome's most infamous femme fatale, whose name was erased from history yet still haunts us. In 48 CE, she didn't just break the rules, she torched them, sneaking into brothels, staging forbidden orgies, and even marrying another man while her emperor husband slept. Was she a power-hungry mastermind, defying a world that caged women, or a reckless villain whose ambition burned Rome's elite to ashes? Her story is no mere gossip, it's a chilling mirror to today's scandals, from political leaks to social media takedowns, where secrets wield more power than swords. Picture this: a young woman, barely 18, slipping through Rome's shadows to outlast courtesans in a seedy brothel, then rising to control senators with their own shame. Her schemes rival modern espionage. Her betrayals echo Watergate's fallout. But here's the hook: every move she made was a gamble, and one wrong step sent her crashing to a brutal end. Why did she risk it all? What drove her to defy an empire? Stick with us to unravel Messalina's darkest secrets. Hit that play button, because this is the wildest tale Rome tried to bury. Comment "Unraveled" below if you're ready to dive into a story that'll make you question everything you know about power, betrayal, and history's hidden truths. Now that Messalina's shadow has hooked you, let's step back to 38 CE, when a teenage girl stepped into Rome's spotlight, her destiny entwined with an empire on the edge. Valeria Messalina, just 15, was thrust into marriage with Claudius, a 48-year-old scholar emperor mocked as a stammering fool by Rome's elite. Picture a young woman, sharp-eyed and ambitious, standing beside a man underestimated by all, in a city where power was a deadly game. Rome in the 40 CE was a glittering beast. Marble palaces hid cutthroat politics, and emperors rose and fell on whispers of betrayal. Claudius, the unlikely ruler after Caligula's assassination, leaned on advisors like Narcissus and his young wife to navigate a senate that despised him. Messalina wasn't just arm candy. She was a player in a world that chained women to silence. Born into the Julio-Claudian dynasty, her bloodline tied her to Augustus, giving her a claim to power most women could only dream of. Yet Rome's patriarchal machine demanded she play the dutiful empress, churn out heirs, smile at banquets, and stay out of politics. But Messalina? She had other plans. Ancient sources like Tacitus paint her as a schemer from the start, charming courtiers with a smile that masked a ruthless mind. By 39 CE, she'd borne Claudia's 2 children, Britannicus and Octavia, cementing her role but craving more. Why settle for influence through a husband when she could bend Rome to her will? Her early moves were subtle, whispering names of rivals to Claudius, watching them vanish on charges of treason. Modern historians, digging through court records, note her knack for exploiting Rome's gossip mill, turning whispers into weapons. Think of today's social media influencers, spinning narratives to sway millions. Messalina was Rome's version, a master of perception in a world without X. But here's the twist. Was she a product of her time, forced to wield power through shadows, or a born manipulator reveling in control? Pause and reflect. If you were trapped in a system that silenced your voice, would you play by its rules or rewrite them? Her story, starting in these gilded cages, sets the stage for a rebellion that would shock Rome's core. From the Palatine's marble halls to the Subura's gritty streets, Messalina's path was no accident. It was a calculated ascent. If her audacity sparks your curiosity, hit that like button and subscribe to uncover more of Rome's hidden truths. Comment empowerment or excess below if you're torn between admiring her nerve or fearing her ambition. Let's dive into how this teenage empress turned Rome upside down, one scandal at a time. With Messalina's poised beginnings now etched in your mind, a restless spirit beneath her imperial facade begins to stir, drawing us into the shadows of her nocturnal adventures that reshaped Rome's power games in ways that mirror the bold, often reckless rebellions we see in today's scandals. Let's step into 40 CE, during the chaotic, norm-shattering festival of Saturnalia, when Rome's rigid social order dissolved into a whirlwind of revelry. Slaves dined like senators, and elites indulged in freedoms they publicly denounced. In this feverish haze, Messalina, just 3 years into her role as empress at the tender age of 18, made her first audacious move. Feigning exhaustion to dismiss her palace guards, she slipped into a coarse woolen tunic and veiled her face, moving like a phantom through the Palatine's marble corridors, her heart pounding with the thrill of secrecy. Her destination was the Subura, Rome's notorious pleasure quarter, a warren of cramped streets where the air hung heavy with the stench of sweat, cheap wine, and desperation. Amid the flicker of oil lamps and the raucous din of tavern brawls, she approached a brothel keeper, offering to work anonymously for one night. The keeper, mistaking her for a thrill-seeking noblewoman, saw no reason to refuse what seemed like easy coin. But what unfolded was far from ordinary. Ancient historian Tacitus, in his annals, claims Messalina outperformed the brothel's most seasoned courtesans, her stamina shocking patrons hardened by Subura's gritty underbelly. By dawn, as others collapsed in exhaustion, she pressed on, her eyes blazing with defiance, only halting when the keeper, overwhelmed by her relentless drive, shut down the night. Pliny the Elder later quantified her feat at 25 clients, a staggering number that strains belief, and modern scholars warn these accounts, penned decades later by men tied to rival emperors, often inflated tales to smear powerful women like Messalina, whose influence threatened the Claudian dynasty's legitimacy. Archaeological finds, like graffiti etched into Subura's crumbling walls, confirm elite women occasionally mingled in such spaces, lending weight to her presence, though the exact numbers remain dubious. Pause for a moment and reflect. In a society that shackled women to pedestals of flawless virtue, was this a desperate cry for freedom, a bold defiance of crushing expectations, or the spark of a darker compulsion? Her motives, pieced together from fragmented records and scholarly analysis, suggest a potent blend of boredom, rebellion, and a hunger for control. An empress seizing agency through anonymity, much like modern figures who escape public scrutiny through secret online personas or clandestine deals in corporate boardrooms. This wasn't a fleeting whim. It marked the start of a calculated escalation that would ripple through Rome's elite circles. By 41 CE, Messalina transformed her nocturnal ventures into organized spectacles, orchestrating endurance contests against Rome's most renowned courtesans, drawing underground audiences of wealthy aristocrats eager to witness the scandal. The most infamous pitted her against Scylla, a veteran courtesan famed for her prowess and charisma. Betting houses buzzed as nobles wagered fortunes on who could outlast the other from dusk to dawn. The stakes as much about prestige as coin. Tacitus describes a packed venue, the air thick with anticipation, as Scylla reached 25 encounters before conceding defeat, her energy spent. Messalina, driven by something beyond physical desire, perhaps a burning need to prove her dominance in a male-ruled empire, pushed past 30, stopping only when no more clients dared step forward. The silence that followed wasn't one of triumph, but of dread, as onlookers realized they had witnessed an empress reduce herself to a gladiator in an arena of flesh. Juvenile satires later mocked these events with biting scorn, but such sources, written under emperors hostile to the Claudians, likely exaggerated her infamy to serve political ends. Modern parallels come to mind. Think of reality TV shows or underground fight clubs, where participants chase validation through extreme, public acts of endurance. Doesn't it feel uncannily similar? This drive to prove oneself in the face of scrutiny. Her victories sent shockwaves through Rome's elite, signaling she could outmaneuver anyone, even in the most taboo arenas. These contests weren't just about personal triumph. They were political statements, asserting her power in a world that denied her direct control. Her ability to command attention in such a forbidden space unnerved senators and courtiers, who began to whisper of her influence with a mix of fear and fascination. If this glimpse into her defiant spirit has you torn between awe and unease, questioning whether she was a mastermind or a menace, Smash that like button and subscribe for more untold Roman horrors. Comment "Power corrupts" if you see echoes of modern scandals like Watergate. Does history warn us about unchecked ambition? Now, let's plunge deeper into how her schemes grew from these personal triumphs into a dangerous web of power that threatened to unravel Rome itself, with Messalina's early escapades cementing her reputation as a force unbound by convention. Her ambitions surged beyond personal triumphs, weaving a web of power that threatened Rome's very foundations. By 42 CE, her nocturnal ventures evolved into a chillingly sophisticated operation, transforming pleasure into a weapon of control. She established a clandestine brothel in a secluded villa near the Campus Martius, masked as an elite social club to lure Rome's powerful without raising suspicion. This was no mere den of excess. It was a calculated intelligence network, rivaling the espionage tactics of Cold War-era Washington, D.C., where private indiscretions could sway public outcomes. Messalina coerced aristocratic women wives and daughters of senators into staffing the villa, using threats of social ruin or fabricated charges against their families to ensure compliance. These women, cloaked in false identities, served a carefully selected clientele of senators, military commanders, and wealthy merchants, each chosen for their access to valuable secrets. Hidden servants, fiercely loyal to Messalina, eavesdropped during these encounters, recording whispers of treason, tax evasion, or dissent against Claudius's policies. The setup was ruthless. Participants only learned their partner's true identity after the act, binding them in a pact of mutual shame that guaranteed silence. Exposing her meant admitting their own moral lapse, a risk few could afford. This villa became a hub of blackmail. Tilting Rome's governance in her favor, compromised officials secured plum imperial appointments, trade deals favored her allies, and policies bent to her whims. Foreign ambassadors, baffled by Rome's erratic decisions, noted irregularities in diplomatic records, a subtle erosion of stability traceable to her influence. Think of modern data breaches or leaked videos that topple careers overnight. Her tactics were ancient, but the power game feels strikingly familiar. By 44 CE, Messalina pushed her schemes further, orchestrating public orgies disguised as religious festivals to Bacchus, where civic duty cloaked calculated humiliations. These events began with traditional rituals, wine poured in solemn offerings, ecstatic dances to the wail of flutes, but quickly spiraled into intimate acts justified as ancient practices, rooted in divine worship. Senators, once proud and untouchable, found themselves coerced into performing before their peers. Their dignity shattered as Messalina commented on their efforts, her words cutting deeper than any blade. Ancient sources like Suetonius hint at involving younger family members for authenticity, a horrifying layer that ensnared entire households. Parents couldn't shield their children without confessing their own participation. This created a cycle of fear stronger than any law, rendering her untouchable, a shadow ruler pulling strings behind Claudius's throne. Her methods mirror today's cancel culture, where public shaming silences opposition, or corporate smear campaigns that leverage private vices for control. Pause and reflect. If you were a senator caught in her trap, would you comply or risk total ruin? Her network expanded by 46 CE, incorporating a web of informants, servants, courtesans, even freedmen who fed her intelligence on court intrigues, enabling her to outmaneuver rivals like Agrippina the Younger, who sought to displace her influence. This wasn't mere ambition. It was a power grab that destabilized Rome's core, corrupting marriages, class loyalty, and trust itself. Her brothel and orgies were not just excess. They were strategic assaults on the empire's moral and political fabric, setting the stage for a rebellion that would test Rome's resilience. As we brace for the climax of her audacity, her empire of secrets teetered on the edge of collapse, threatening to unravel the delicate balance of power in a city built on tradition and control. As Messalina's empire of secrets reached its zenith, the threads of her audacious web began to fray, setting the stage for a dramatic unraveling that would shake Rome to its core. By 48 CE, her schemes had grown so bold that they could no longer hide in the shadows. Her latest gambit was a public marriage to Gaius Silius, a charismatic senator, and one of Rome's most eligible bachelors, while still wed to Emperor Claudius. This wasn't a quiet affair. It was a spectacle staged during a Bacchic festival, with hundreds of witnesses, senators, soldiers, and freedmen watching in stunned silence as she exchanged vows in a lavish ceremony, complete with priests and floral crowns. Tacitus describes the scene as a mockery of Roman tradition, with Messalina draped in a bridal veil, her laughter echoing as Claudius remained oblivious, away on a military inspection. Was this a reckless act of love, a calculated power grab, or a final taunt to an empire she believed she controlled? Modern scholars debate her motives. Some see a desperate bid to secure her son Britannicus's future by aligning with Silius. Others, a delusional overreach fueled by years of unchecked power. Picture the tension. A city buzzing with whispers, senators torn between loyalty to Claudius and fear of her wrath. Her marriage to Silius wasn't just scandal, it was treason, a direct challenge to imperial authority. Pause and reflect. If you were a witness, would you dare speak out, knowing her network of informants could crush you? News of the ceremony reached Claudius through his freedman Narcissus, who risked his life to expose her. Enraged and humiliated, Claudius returned to Rome, but Messalina, undaunted, threw a lavish party at the villa, dancing among her guests as if untouchable. Suetonius claims she mocked Claudius openly, calling him a fool unfit to rule, her words dripping with contempt. Yet her confidence was her undoing. Narcissus, backed by a faction of senators fed up with her manipulations, presented evidence of her brothel network and orgies, detailing how she'd compromised Rome's elite. The psychological weight was crushing Claudius, already insecure, faced the reality that his wife had made him a laughingstock. Her actions mirror modern political betrayals, like high-profile leaks that topple administrations, exposing hidden power plays to public outrage. By late 48 CE, the tide turned. Claudius, pressured by his advisors, ordered her arrest. Messalina fled to the gardens of Lucullus, clutching Britannicus in a desperate plea for mercy. But her network of allies crumbled. Those she'd blackmailed now saw a chance to break free. Tacitus recounts her final moments. Confronted by soldiers, she attempted to charm them, her voice trembling but defiant. When that failed, she was offered a dagger to end her life honorably, but hesitated, weeping as a centurion delivered the fatal blow. Her death was swift, but the fallout was seismic. Rome's elite, once bound by her web of shame, scrambled to distance themselves, while Claudius, dazed, reportedly asked where his wife was hours later. Her execution wasn't just the end of a scandal. It was a warning to Rome's power brokers that even the most cunning could fall. Modern parallels leap out. Think of political scandals, like Watergate or corporate collapses, where unchecked ambition leads to ruin. Her downfall, though, wasn't just personal. It destabilized Claudius's reign, paving the way for Agrippina the Younger's rise. As we move toward the resolution of this saga, consider: was Messalina a victim of her own hubris, or a visionary crushed by a system that feared her power? Her story leaves us questioning the fine line between ambition and destruction, a lesson that echoes through history's darkest corners. With Messalina's dramatic fall, Rome stood at a crossroads, reeling from the shockwaves of her audacious schemes and sudden execution. The year was 48 CE, and the empire's elites scrambled to restore order, their trust fractured by the empress who had turned their secrets against them. Her death in the gardens of Lucullus wasn't just the end of a scandal. It was a seismic shift that exposed the fragility of power in a city built on loyalty and tradition. Claudius, still dazed by betrayal, withdrew into a haze of indecision, his court now a battleground for factions vying to fill the void. Messalina's web of informants dissolved overnight, as senators and freedmen she'd once controlled rushed to bury their complicity, their whispers of her brothel and Bacchic orgies fading into cautious silence. Tacitus notes that her name was struck from public records, her statues toppled, a deliberate erasure to cleanse Rome of her influence. Yet, the scars remained. Her actions had destabilized Claudius's reign, leaving him vulnerable to manipulation. Enter Agrippina the Younger, Messalina's cunning rival, who seized the moment to secure her own power, marrying Claudius within months and positioning her son Nero as heir over Messalina's son, Britannicus. This swift transition wasn't just political. It was a masterclass in opportunism, much like modern political operatives capitalizing on a rival's downfall to reshape a government's trajectory. Britannicus, barely 10, was sidelined, his mother's legacy a whispered curse that tainted his future. But was Messalina's story truly over? Her erasure from history was never complete. Ancient sources like Suetonius and Juvenal kept her infamy alive, though their accounts, laced with misogynistic bias, painted her as a caricature of vice. Modern historians, sifting through archaeological evidence like Subura's graffiti and court records, argue she was more than a scandalous empress. Her brothel network and orgies, while shocking, were tools of power in a world that denied women direct control, a desperate bid to wield influence in a male-dominated empire. Some see her as a proto-feminist figure, defying norms to assert agency, while others view her as a cautionary tale of hubris, her ambition outpacing her ability to navigate Rome's treacherous politics. Pause and reflect. Was Messalina a villain sculpted by her enemies' pens, or a visionary who pushed too far against an unforgiving system? Her story resonates today. Think of modern figures like corporate whistleblowers or political insiders who challenge power structures, only to be vilified or erased when they fall. Rome recovered, but the cost was clear. Claudius's reign grew erratic, his trust in advisors like Narcissus wavering, while Agrippina's rise set the stage for Nero's chaotic rule. Messalina's schemes, from Subura's shadows to the Bacchic festivals, revealed how fragile power could be when trust and loyalty crumbled. Her legacy wasn't in statues or decrees, but in the questions she left behind. How far can ambition stretch before it snaps? How does a society rebuild when its core is exposed as corrupt? These echoes linger in today's scandals, from high-profile leaks to public shaming campaigns, where power plays unravel in the blink of an eye. As we close this chapter, her story challenges us to look beyond the surface, to question the narratives written by victors. Rome moved on, but Messalina's shadow lingered, a reminder that power, unchecked, can both create and destroy. Messalina's saga, from the smoky alleys of Subura to the treacherous heights of imperial power, leaves us standing at the edge of history's mirror, staring at a woman whose ambition both captivated and shattered Rome. Her story, woven through daring escapades, calculated schemes, and a catastrophic fall, challenges us to grapple with the timeless dance of power, betrayal, and consequence. As the dust settled on her execution in 48 CE, Rome tried to erase her name, but her shadow lingers, not just in the pages of Tacitus or Suetonius, but in the questions her life forces us to confront. Was she a monster, crafted by her enemies? A product of a system that vilified women who dared too much? Or a flawed genius who played a dangerous game and lost? Her legacy isn't in marble statues or imperial decrees, it's in the warning she left behind. Unchecked ambition can burn bright, but collapse spectacularly. This isn't just ancient gossip, it's a lens into our world. Look at today's scandals, political leaks, corporate cover-ups, or social media storms that toppled giants overnight. Don't they echo Messalina's web of secrets, her use of shame to control, her defiance of norms that others feared to touch? Her story dares us to question the narratives we're fed, to peel back the layers of history and ask who writes the villain's tale. Was she Rome's ultimate power player, outmaneuvering a patriarchal empire, or a cautionary figure whose hubris invited ruin? Pause and reflect. When you see modern leaders fall to scandal, do you see Messalina's shadow, someone pushing boundaries until they break? Her life urges us to look closer at power today. Whether it's a politician caught in a sting, a CEO exposed by whistleblowers, or an influencer undone by their own excess, the patterns repeat: ambition, risk, and reckoning. Rome rebuilt after her, but the cracks she exposed, distrust, corruption, fractured loyalties, took years to mend. And some say Claudius's reign never recovered. Her downfall paved the way for Agrippina and Nero, whose own chaos would plunge Rome deeper into turmoil. History doesn't just repeat, it whispers lessons we ignore at our peril. So, what's the action here? Don't just let this story fade into the past. Dig deeper. Question the stories you're told about power gender, and morality. Share Messalina's tale in the comments below. Tell us, do you think she was a victim of her time or the architect of her own destruction? Hit that subscribe button to dive into more untold histories that challenge what you thought you knew. Check out our playlist on Rome's forgotten figures, from Agrippina to Caligula, and see how their shadows shape our world today. History isn't a dusty book. It's a living warning, a call to understand the games of power we still play. Messalina's life, from the Subura's shadows to the Palatine's heights, reminds us that ambition can build empires or burn them down. Let's keep exploring these stories, not just to marvel at their drama, but to learn from their truths. What's the next tale you want to uncover? Drop it below, and let's unravel history together.